All right, and we're back. So where last we left off, we had this thing working where we have a bit of a scoreboard going on the top portion of our screen. However, one of the challenges is we don't have, and we jump, we should have sound, right? We have sound. We kind of borrow that from Unity, that wave sound. And but the score doesn't do anything yet because we don't have any obstacles to go around to kill us, and we don't have anything, any kind of score, anything to pick up. So let's make a pickup, and we'll make it in Blender and import it because this will be it'll kind of kill two birds with one stone. All right, in order for you to import stuff with Blender, you have to, or export with Blender, you have to do something like this. So export, so Blender, export to 3JS. What you're actually doing is you need to do this 3JS utils exporter, right? And if you notice, it's part of the 3JS library. So under 3JS, you have some tools under add-ons called IO_3. You have to put that in the right place. So if you notice in Blender for Windows, it has to be in, for version 2.7x, it's got to be in C, Program Files, Blender Foundation, Blender 2.7x, whatever it is, scripts, add-ons. So that means this folder here, this IO3, a whole IO3 folder with the Python stuff, has to go inside this folder right here. That's the first setup you have to do, all right? If you're on a Mac, it has to go under users, whatever username is, library, application support, Blender, 2.7x, scripts, add-ons. Once you've got that in there, right, then what you can do is you can kick off Blender. So let's do that. And under Blender, you can go into File, User Preferences, Add-ons, and then you'll see under Import Export that it will appear as an option for 3JS. So if you notice 3JS Import Export 3JS format, I have it checked already. It's in preparation for today. And you notice that this file export is what's going to happen. Okay, I'm not going to change anything here. This is the standard file exporter that's in here in Blender. So there's two pieces. You have to turn it on here, but in order for you to turn it on there, you have to install it in the right position, in the right place, as is said in this document under the people. And by the way, the person who makes 3JS, Mr. Do, under GitHub, he's the guy that's kind of put up this little add-on for Blender, which is very useful for us. So what does this add-on do? It produces a JSON object file that we can use to load in a custom geometry from Blender into 3JS and PhysiJS. Okay. So how do we do that? Let's go and do something in Blender first. Let's make a test. So here we got our little cube. I want to get rid of my cube, right? So I'm going to get rid of my cube. And we're going to make a coin from scratch, right? But it's going to be very stupid simple, right? Coin that's yellow, right? That's going to spin, all right? That's it. It's going to look pretty ugly. Remember, I told you, even for this game, you don't need textures. Textures are extras, right? So how do I do that? I'm going to Shift A for add, and I'm going to add in the cylinder, right? So here's my cylinder. Now, by default, the Blender cylinder, I'm going to zoom in here for a second so you can see this. The Blender cylinder has 32 vertices. That's too many for my coin. I'm going to cut this down to 10. So I'm going to go here and go 10. Here's my the vertices. And also notice that the depth is 2, right? I want to make the depth, right? If I go 0.5, let's take a look what that looks like. 0.5. That looks pretty like a fat coin, right? I think that coin's too fat. Let's make it 0.25. So 0.25. There we go. There's my coin. Very simple, right? Coin. What does it look like? It looks like this. Yay! It's a coin. I made this out of a cylinder. Okay, and that took me 2 seconds. Okay, so now once we've got this little object, yeah, you can engrave it. You can do different things if you really want to. For now, let's keep it simple. Let's just make it like this, guys. And that's how we start off with our experiments. We start off small, and then we increase, right? Here, I want to give it a material to test with. So I'm going to go to Materials. I'm going to click New. And I'm going to change my material so it's kind of a yellowish color, right? And by the way, if you want to make it kind of goldish color, and you want to know what the hexadecimal value is when we take it back into 3JS, so we're going to make our own material there. It's a Lambert. I want to change this from a Lambert. This is good. My specular, I want to go from a Cook Tor to a Fong, so we can get closer as much as possible, right? And I want to increase the intensity here much higher, so it's like really shiny, like a shiny little coin, right? So all I've done is change my intensity from my material all the way up, and I want to rename this material from material to coin. I also want to change from my cylinder, where it says cylinder, I want to rename this cylinder. So right-click, rename. I want to rename the cylinder to coin. Okay, so that way when I export it, it's going to say coin. Okay, cool. Now it's lying flat. I don't want it to lie flat. I want this coin to stand up. So what do? I'm going to flip it on the x-axis 90 degrees. But I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to do it in edit mode. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to press tab in. Notice that everything is highlighted. And I'm going to rotate across the x-axis. So R and then X 90. Okay? That's in edit mode. In edit mode, right? And now I'm going to press tab to tab out. So notice now the way it's set up is that it's a standing up coin like this. Okay, that's all it is. Yay, what a simple, silly coin it is. Let's save this blend file because just in case I want to modify it later on in this course and I want to add some detail to the coin, I don't want to redo this, right? So I'm going to say File, Save As, and I'm going to point into my document, so COMP392, into Lesson 10, right? And here's my assets, but I want to create a new folder in here, a new folder, right, where I can put stuff, right? Because I think what I want to try and do is store it as, here's create new directory. I want to store it as imported. This is kind of stuff that I want imported assets, right? I could also have called it Blender, but let's call it imported, right? So I'm going to double click in there and then rename this thing coin.blend. Now we can't use the blend file. Can't use the blend file, but I want to export in there as well when I export. So I'm going to save my blend file, so I have my blend file saved, coin.blend. So I can always go back and open this again. When I upload to GitHub, I'm going to give you guys the blend file in case you couldn't do it as fast as me, right? Okay, so that's number one. Two, I want to export. How am I going to do that? I'm going to go File, Export, and I'm going to go to where it says 3JS, and look how it says JSON as my format. So I'm going to click 3JS. Now, it's going to put it right in the same place as my blend file. Look, it's going into COMP392, Lesson 10 Assets Imported. That's where it's going to go by default because I've already saved my coin.blend in there, right? Well, this is cool, but before I click on Export 3, I'm going to scroll down here, right? And underneath the objects I want to export, right? Notice how there is, I not only just don't want just to export my objects, but also my materials. Just want to put my materials in there, right? I'm not going to click on textures. You can click on other settings in here as well. And I want vertices, normals, faces, and UVs. UVs would be if I had a texture. I mean, I don't have anything right now, but I could, right? And there's also other things I can choose. I'm going to leave everything else as is. Lights, notice I can export also the scene itself, lights, hierarchy, cameras, whatever I want, right? I'm not going to do that, though. I'm just going to leave it as is. And when I do that, I'm going to click Export 3. Okay, it's exported it. Let's see what I have, my result. I don't need my Blender anymore. I can get rid of it now. Let's see what my result is inside my document. Here's 3JS. If I go to my assets, under imported, I have a file called coin.json. Let's take a look at what that JSON file looks like. It should look like this for you too, like this. Okay? If it doesn't look like this, you've done something different than me. Notice how in the JSON we have some metadata, type geometry, generator is IO3. That's the latest version of the generator. How many faces I have 26 faces, 20 normals, 0 UVs, because I don't have any UVs on this one, 20 vertices, and version 3 of my exporter. My name is cylinder geometry. I could change this here if I wanted to, right? Like, for example, I can make this coin geometry, but I'm going to leave it alone, right? And everything else, these are just vertices and normals and faces. I don't want to change it. This is all the definition for my custom geometry. Okay. how do I load this thing in? And this is the key here. What I want to do is I want to make a method called add coin mesh. Add coin mesh. And just like we have other functions, I want to add this in after I do everything else. But before I do my other methods, and I'll talk about this in a second, let's go back. So here's my game.ts, right? And in my game.ts file, if I look at my main file, I have my collision check. If I want to collide with a coin, the coin has to exist before my collider exists, right? Here's my collision check. This is my event listener. That means just after player, I have to make a coin, and before I do my add event listener. If I do it after, it won't happen. Won't work, right? So I want to make this function come in right here, and I'm going to call the function. We're going to call it add coin mesh, right? Because we don't have that right now. We're going to add the coin here. Add custom coin imported from Blender. That's what we're doing here, right? So here's my add coin mesh. We don't have this function yet, but we will. Let's go back down here. And we're just gonna call this function somewhere down here. Doesn't, just as long as it's after or before the file, doesn't matter. It'll reorder itself. Here's my function, and we're gonna call this add coin mesh. And it's gonna return void. And this function here is where we're gonna add in a reference to our coin. Now, in order for us to do that, we have to do some prep, and we have to prep some variables, right? We have to prep some variables for us in order for us to be successful in incorporating this into Three.js. Again, I'm going to give you the formula. I don't expect you to know this formula on your own, right? But it's important for us to understand what I need. Okay, so let's go to the top where I have my variables. Okay, and I have here's my direction line, and this is my sphere geometry. Remember we had that sphere we were testing with, we had our player. Let's just separate that. So here's our Three.js and Fizzy.js objects. That's what they are. So we're going to put that in here too. So we're going to say a new coin object, and I want to be kind of strategic here. I know I need a coin geometry. My type is very key here. It's going to be just geometry, which is Three.js.geometry, all right? Because that's what I'm importing. I'm also going to create a coin material. Okay, so here's my material. And I want to create a Fizzy.js, make it a Fizzy.js.material, because that way it'll have physics. I also, on top of that, I also want to have a coin, the coin itself. And this is where people are going to be, it makes sense for you, right? It's going to be a Fizzy.js convex mesh. Why? A convex mesh is going to wrap around my object, so the collision bounds are going to be exact to my coin, as opposed to if I use some other thing like a box collider or something else like that, a box mesh. So those are the three things I need: coin geometry, coin material, Fizzy.js material, and my coin, which is a Fizzy.js convex mesh. Yeah. For each coin, it depends on how many coins you have. It can be expensive. But the thing is, it also depends on how complicated your shape is. I have a custom shape, right? There is no coin shape in the game, right? In Three.js. So, I mean, you could use a box, but the thing is, it might react a little differently than you're expecting. And it depends on what you want to do with the coin, right? As well. Okay, so I've prepared my object. And let's set up some of this, to import it in here, right? So again, I'm going to go back to my add coin mesh, right, which is the function that I'm going to be using. Make sure I get on my notes so I don't miss anything, because this can be just a waste of our time, and I don't want to do that. There it is. And this is the kind of stuff that I do, while I prep for this class to make sure that everything's working. Okay, so let's go down and do that. So we got our little add coin mesh. here it is. This is where we call it. Just before our event listener, we can do our check. And down in here where I've kind of added a space for add the coin. So this is where I'm going to add the coin to the scene, right? If I want to add more than one coin, I can certainly do that, right? But I'm creating my coin mesh here. It's really what I'm doing, right? So I'm going to say something like this: coin geometry, right, is equal to a new geometry. A new geometry. Okay, here's the first thing I want to do. I'm creating an empty object because until it's created, I can't do an update. If you ever try and do a load up a coin from Blender and then try and update it right away, there's a bit of a delay, right? So just FYI, this is kind of the tried and true way of doing it. Coin material, here's my coin material. Again, I'm just creating a placeholder right now. So fizzy.js dot create material, and we're going to make it so it's a new Lambert material. You can make it Lambert material, or you can also make it a Phong material. That's fine too. Let's make it a Phong material just to be quick. Phong material. There we go. Okay, that's what our coin material is. So it's shining. Okay, and the next thing is what we want to try and do is we want to say we're going to define our coin as a new fizzy.js dot convex mesh. Right, so we know what it is with passing in our coin material, our coin geometry, like we've already done before, and our coin material. Notice that I'm not putting any physics onto it, just creating our objects as placeholders. This is almost like initializing our objects. So initialize coin container object. That's what this is. All right, we haven't made our coin, we haven't imported my coin geometry yet. All I'm doing is initializing. I need to do that because later on you're going to see that if I haven't initialized, none of it will work. Okay, next. Here's something that I'm going to do. I'm going to create a local variable here, right, called coin loader. Right, so var coin loader. I'm never going to have to refer to this again. So here in my function, I'm just going to do it one time. Coin loader is equal to a new free.js, right, JSON loader. So my JSON loader, I'm going to go .load, right, just like we did the texture load, is equal to, and this is where we can't avoid, // right, assets imported, if I'm not wrong, coin.json. Just take a look. I'll open that up so you guys can see the whole line. And let's check to see if that path is correct by going here like this. So go to assets imported coin.json. That's what I'm going to, okay? That's what it looks like. Okay, so my coin loader is right here. That's all I'm doing. I'm using my coin loader to load up my JSON object inside my coin loader method, or my coin loader object. Okay. Next, after I've done that, I want to wait until it's loaded, right? So as soon as my coin loader is finished loading, right, I'm going to call a anonymous function. An anonymous function, of course, in TypeScript looks like this. Where I'm going to pass in a fat arrow function, right, that looks like this, right? And inside here, I want to pass in something called geometry, right? Here's geometry, which is of type, of course, geometry, right? It's hard to see it all, but that's what it looks like. So here's my fat arrow function. I've got my path to my coin, and then I go geometry. Geometry is what I'm passing in. Geometry is the actual object that I'm passing in. Okay, so inside my coin loader script, right, I'm going to do something like this. Remember that I have coin material, right? So I'm going to say coin material is equal to fizzy.js dot create material, and it's going to be a new Phong material. So I'm going to pass in, let's say, a color just to make sure what it is of 0xFF00. Let's say to make it pure red or yellow. And if I want to get the exact color of the other object, I can go back to Blender and get it. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm also going to pass in some basics. So I'm going to say 0.4 for friction if I need to move the coin around, and 0.6 for restitution from a bounce. from a bounce perspective. I don't know how my mouse got there. All right, from a bounce perspective. So that's my coin material, just like we normally would do for any other object. Now I'm doing this inside my coin loader script, right? The reason why is because once I have my JSON object, then I want to create my actual material. Okay, good. Now, that's number one. Two, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say coin is equal to new busy.js. So I'm redoing it again. Convex mesh. And this time I'm passing in a reference to geometry and coin material. And with a mass of 1. My coin is going to have mass. Notice that where's my geometry coming from? My geometry is coming from my JSON object. So instead of me creating a geometry like a plane geometry or a cylinder geometry, whatever, my geometry is going to be a custom geometry that's defined here in the JSON object, and that's what's being passed in to this function, this callback function. That's how it works, right? So once I get this geometry, it gets passed into my convex mesh. When I build my coin, I'm passing in my geometry plus this coin material. Now I could have taken this material because it's not changing, this exact material. I could have done this and put it out here. It's the same difference. If I go put it out here like this, it's the same. Really, all I need to do is combine my geometry with my material. I'm just putting it in there to show you what it looks like. Okay, let's do the rest. So now that I've got my coin, it's loaded up, right? And I'm using my coin loader to do that. I want to define some other aspects of it. Now I can do that after the coin is loaded up, right? So I can do something like this. I can say my coin, things that aren't going to affect the coin, like coin.receive shadow, right? My receive shadow is going to be true. And it's going to cache shadows as well, cache shadow. And I'm also going to give it a name because we want to be able to detect the collision. Coin name is equal to coin, right? And what I want to do is I want to set my coin position randomly, but I want to do it every time that I pick it up. I want to set up. I want to spawn a new coin, right? So if I'm going to spawn a new coin, I need a method. So let's call up set coin position method. Set coin position, which I don't have yet, which I'm going to define underneath here. So set coin position. This is my function set coin position, which is going to return void. All I'm using it for, so I can call it again and again, right? In my set coin position method, right? What I want to do is do something like this: var random point x, right? Let's say as an example is a number that is between, let's say math.floor. We're going to just round down because we want to get an actual pixel, a pixel number. Math.random multiplied by, let's say 20, right? And then subtract 10. So anywhere between -10 and 10 is what this is going to give you, this number, for random point x. And I want to do the same thing for random point y. So just in here, whenever I call set coin position, I'm going to have random point x and random point y, right? So a random position that it's going to be. And then I'm going to do this, coin.position.set. I'm going to say random point x and then random point y, right? And this, or actually, is that z? Did I make it z? Yeah, sorry. I should have said z because I keep thinking x and y. But of course, I'm this is like the wrath of Khan. I'm a two-dimensional thinker. Let's go back to the position. I'm going to kind of put it in the, throw it up in the air in the y direction by 10 units as an example, right? And so what's going to happen is it's going to get a random x and z position on the x and z plane, but with a, I'm going to put it up in the air initially to like 10 units up, and it's going to fall. That's what I'm going to do with it. And then what I'm going to do is right away, I'm going to when I set my position, I'm going to add it to the scene. There's a reason for this. Let's say scene.add coin. Okay, so this set coin position is going to be called from my add coin mesh, right? Every time it's called, I'm going to get my coin. Let's see what I got so far. Because, you know, maybe there's a problem. I mean, I've typed a lot of stuff in. Who knows if it's going to work. So far, it looks like it's transpiling nice, right? But what does it look like from this perspective, right? Let me just refresh. And when I kind of come into play, where's my coin? I want to see my coin, right? Where is it? How come it's not here, right? And to notice where it is, first of all, let's do a couple things. I'm going to kind of come out and go inspect and to see maybe that I missed something, right? So I go to my console and see if I've got any kind of errors. I got some warnings, right? Got a couple warnings here for render count and whatever. In my localhost says WebGL, too many errors, no more errors will be reported to the console for this context, right? And I got like under WebGL it says, you know, 124 different errors for my render warning. Render count or prime count is 0, it says, right? Now, if you guys got this, these are warnings, they're not errors. But one way to check it is to fall. So let's check, see if my coin is hiding somewhere, right? So I'm going to kind of play the game and then fall outside of the thing. Maybe it's kind of underneath somewhere. So is it hiding somewhere? No. If it was, I would see it, my coin, right? All right, so what else happened? What else could have happened, right? Well, let's make sure that I transpile properly, because sometimes what happens is, I'll be honest with you, ladies and gents, that my transpilation doesn't quite work, right? So I'm just going to transpile manually. You can also rerun gulp to make sure that works, right? And I want to know where my random position is. So coin.position.set is cool. That's one thing I want to do, right? And I mean, the simulation is going to work because in my game loop, everything is as normal. Nothing is changing here, right? That's one. The second thing I want to check is what I changed up here when I created my coin in the first place. So I got my function init, and as I go down here, notice, remember I took that little piece out of my coin when I added my coin position. Let's make sure that it's there. So I have to. So here's my add coin mesh, and I'm adding it in right here. So here's my add coin mesh. Let's add in a console log. So here's my scene. Here's my add coin mesh. So at the bottom, when I add this stuff in my position, I'm going to put another console.log that says added coin to see it through the scene. Important for me to try and do that. The other thing is, see this what I did before with my material, my coin material. One thing I did in testing was I had this actually in here for the first time, right? I actually had it in here because to define my mesh again, my create just material one more time, right? Because it's funky what happens when you have a callback function and the context that you get into, right? This might have been, my coin material might be 0 when I get into this context. Just saying, right? All right, so I'll save everything as is, again, which will transpile everything. And then let's see what I get if I get my coin. Again, it's going to be in a random position, so I got to search around to see if I see it, number one. And also, let's check to see if I've got my, in my inspector, to see where I've got my stuff. If I've got any change. So this is where my, so I says added coin to the scene up here. Here's added stats to the scene, and way up down in here is where I'm getting all these funky options here, because this thing that's coming up that's saying, hey, so here's all these errors. Are you guys getting the same thing? You trying it? Anybody doing it with me and getting the same errors, right? Or are you just watching? Right? Watching, great. So this is going to be a problem, and the way to check that, of course, is to say, well, how do I check to see what these errors are? There's 259 warnings, right? That's what these are, and I can't open this up. It says 3js.min.js localhost 1, right? This is where I'm running localhost 8080, right? Just to test this, I'm going to run this in incognito mode for a second. Let's kill some of these because I don't need these anymore, and I'll need this. This is just my latest update. my repository. But let's check it and see if I run incognito mode, is there a change? Because sometimes caching is what kills me, right? And I want to be able to kind of come in here and check to see that there's no coin. And I also have to wait around a bit. All right, let's check to see where my coin is. So I can do some inspection. So I want to be able to see, does my coin even exist in my scene, right? Because that's kind of an important aspect, right? I want to check to see if my coin has been added. No coin, I can't do any kind of change with it. And also, did it read everything? That's the other thing that I had a problem. Like, I mean, I'm looking at imported. I want to check everything to make sure that this is correct. So it's assets imported coin.json. So here's assets imported. I'm just going to recheck assets imported coin.json. There's my metadata, right, for geometry. I haven't changed anything here, right? And one more thing to try is to re-export things as the default, because sometimes the default works a little better sometimes. So I may have to try and re-export. Sometimes these vertices are the problem, right? So I want to see if I'm getting my coin object. So the way to do that is, of course, to output it. So I'm going to go back to my game.ts. And when I'm loading it up, so I'm loading up a bunch of stuff here. So inside my add coin mesh, what I want to do here is I want to show what my geometry, the geometry that I'm getting in from my object. If I'm getting nothing, that'll give me my errors. So let's do a console.log geometry. I'm putting this inside my coin loader callback function. Okay, let's try this out. So I'm going to go back into my file, and I do get a geometry. Look, here it is right here, right? So I'm getting a geometry. It says that my bones are undefined. That's okay. My bounding box is a 3.box3, and my bounding sphere is a 3.sphere. Right here it is. So I've got something coming in. It's type of geometry. So I'm getting a geometry, which is good. That means I'm reading something in. If I didn't have this, then I would know my JSON file loading would be incorrect. Okay, so here's a couple of vector 3s that I'm getting. Here's my bounding sphere and my colors. If I'm going to get any colors, anything else that's been imported will show up right here. Faces. There's 36 faces that I'm getting in here. These are the faces that each one of these faces show a color and an object and so on. You can see, you can go drill right down into the whole construct. So I am getting this thing, and it says, warning, output of vertex shader V world position is not ready by fragment shader. Let's try and export again. And for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my Blender file, right, which I saved. This is what sometimes we have to do. Just double click my coin.blend. Here's my coin.blend. And one thing I did last time that really worked is I went from Blender render to Blender game. That's one thing that helped. And I also turned on other things. I turned on the type of collision. I turned on collision bounds as a convex mesh. So, or convex hull is what it's called. And I'll save that. Yeah, save order. So that's one thing that I changed. So Blender rendered, Blender game. The other thing I did was I went right back down to when I exported, I did an export, file, export. I tried exporting again. And I went right back to the 3JS. And in here, what I want to do is you can go to reset defaults, restore defaults. I restored my defaults here. Because sometimes what happens is I make some funky changes by accident, like by just moving things down here. And notice that it says shading, face materials, vertex colors, and so on. I don't want to include any of that stuff. And last time I added materials. This time I'm not going to. So I'm not going to put in materials or scene or lights or anything. And I'm leaving it as is, just like this. Okay. And now I'm going to export into my coin.json file. So here's my coin.json. I'm going to export it again. And let's take a look at my file, what it looks like now, if it's changed anything when I'm in my exported. So here's my coin. Yeah, it is different. See how it looks different now? See how I have this piece up here, then metadata, and then my vertices? That's what I'm used to seeing. That's good. That's just by changing that. I don't have to change my code, but just by changing that, I should be able to refresh my scene, and then maybe it'll work this time around, maybe. Right? By looking around the scene, I might be able to see my coin. And if I don't, right, like everything else is working except for that coin, right? If I don't, the other thing is, well, that's weird. My lives and my score went weird. That went squirrely. But let's take a look if I fall off the edge of the universe. Do I see anything? Cause I should be, sometimes my coin gets stuck on the bottom or it falls really fast or whatever. Refresh my scene. I tested a couple times. I'm still getting this funky error, which is kind of weird, right? And I gotta trace it because this is not a regular error. Like I'm not getting an X, it's not gonna work error, right? I'm getting a funky error where I get a 3 geometry, which is good. Notice that my 3 geometry is slightly different than before, right, which is good. But then I'm getting all these errors, and it's like spinning up these errors, my rendering errors, right? This is what's happening here. I'm just gonna check my notes to make sure that I got everything correct, because otherwise we won't have my my stuff running the way I want it to run. But I think I've got everything as is rendering correctly. Yes. Sure. I can make it exactly in front of me instead of random, just to make it so that you can see it. So let's try that. -10 to +10. What do you mean? No, it's not the problem. But I was going to test that anyway. So thank you. What he's saying is, what Joshua was saying is, instead of my random coin position, just set up a fixed coin position. So instead of random point X and random point Y, let's just kind of do one of these. And just put in, yeah, right in the middle, coin dot position. We'll make it 1 1 1. 0 1 0. Position dot set, and it's 0 1 0. Just so it's set. So it's kind of in the middle of our scene, right? So it's not going to fall anywhere, and I'm not looking up to try and find it. It's there, right? So if everything goes well, then I should be able to see my scene by looking up. Let me just try this again. And don't worry, guys. If it doesn't work this time, I'll fix it. It'll work later. Next time we get together, it'll work. I did it. I just did it today, so it worked perfect, of course. But when I come here, and it should appear right here, right? It should kind of appear right in front of us, right? What's that? Doesn't matter. 10, 1. You're talking about like this to spit that for it to fall? It would appear right in front of me. I would see it, right? Yeah, I set the material and the gravity here. So if, remember when I went to my add coin mesh, right? Here's my add coin mesh, and in my position, I'm adding the coin. Here it is, where I'm adding it in my convex mesh, right? And what I'm saying is, it's a new geometry, a new material. As an example, I could make this instead of a Phong material. I could make it something else. But this is working. I'm actually getting my geometry. Yeah. Yes. Yes, and coin, because it's right here. I've done this before. This is not the problem. No, I understand. But I'm saying, if you don't use convex mesh, then you'll never get illusions. Right? So if you notice over here, right, where it says add coin mesh, this is where I add the coin mesh. Right underneath my player. I add my player, then I have my coin, then I do my event listening, right, for my sphere. And I don't have a sphere anymore, right? But I do have a coin, and I can do that. I can say, if this is what I really want to happen, if dot name is exactly equal to coin, which is what I called it before, right? This is what I want to happen. I want to do a console.log, player hit coin. That's what I want to do. And I also want to do one of these. I want to do a create.js.sound, play a coin sound. I don't have a coin sound yet, but I want to do that. And I also want to update my score. But this is what I want to do up here. Here's my directional line, right? And here's another thing. My directional line, do I see it when I play? If I don't see my directional line, I got to look at all these things to see what I see. There might be something that's missing in here that I'm doing. Oh, here's something. Did I take away my sphere or do I keep it in? Did I keep it in? I don't know. So I'm going to go through this thing. Instead of you guys having to worry about what it is, I'll find the issue, right? Because I'll compare it with my my example code. I have a solution set for this, right? and then I'll fix it, and then I'll come back next day and we'll have a problem. We'll have a fix instead of you having to figure it out. So again, if I refresh, the coin in this particular case should be right in front of us, like right here. We can't see it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So what's left? I got to do a couple of things by next day. I got to give you your final project. That's what I'm going to do next day before you guys go. That's number 1. 2, and I'm almost ready for it. 2, I want to also give you the death plane. I want to create a death plane where if I fall down, I die and reset. And I want to talk about how do I reset my characters, my coins, my stuff. I want to be able to do that right with you. So that's like number 2. Because without those 2 things, then you won't have a mechanic. I want to show you scoring both ways, sounds for everything. We're going to put those things in. I want to also do some sounds for footsteps. So when I walk, I want a random footstep sound. We'll talk about how to do that, right? So all those kind of things we'll do by next day when I see you guys on Wednesday. Guys, thank you so much for bearing with it, and we'll finish everything off next day.